porque siamo firmos doa.
Before the release of Dragon Ball Sparking, Bandai Namco was looking crazy in the face. They were coming off the heels of this massive review bomb that hit Tekken 8. You had two portions of it. One, player being upset about the stage, but then two, the players being upset that a Chinese player was banned. We won't go into the details. I made many videos about it. But as you can see here, Steam has basically excluded that review bomb from the Steam review. Steam says this time range has been marked as containing an abnormal set of reviews that we believe are largely unrelated to the likelihood that you would enjoy the product. The reviews within the period are excluded from the review score by default, right? So this moved the score from mostly negative back to mix where it was before, the whole, Chinese player situation took place, right? But then when you look at their Steam player base, right, when Heihachi came out, they were sitting pretty at a 14,000. Now, I was wondering if they would maintain that number, but as we can see, they have not. The number fell back down and is sitting at 7,000, kind of where it was before Heihachi came out. So Tekken is not in the best place, but Bandai Namco as a whole, you would assume they're doing better, especially with the release of Sparking Zero. We have confirmation now that this game has sold 3 million copies in the first 24 hours. That is massive. The Tekken players celebrated when Tekken 8 was announced to have 1 million copies day one, so you can see just how much bigger it is by comparison. Now, to be fair, Dragon Ball is one of the most famous IPs of all time, so it's no surprise that it's going to beat Tekken 8. It's really not even close. But Bandai Namco as a company, you would imagine they would be doing somewhat better. But then at the same time as this Sparking news break about the sales, you have this other situation break where Bandai Namco is being accused of trying to force their employees to leave the company. Before we get into this, let's just go back a couple of months ago, just in case you guys don't remember. Blue Protocol. That was a game that Bandai Namco gambled hugely on. They wanted that to be their cash cow for the next 5-10 years, but it didn't pan out that way. That game flopped in Japan. They were going to release it worldwide, but then they decided to just scrap it. They lost a huge amount of money on that, and this is kind of, in my opinion, this is what triggering them to be so aggressive in their monetization elsewhere. They lost so much money on that game, and they want to make it back. They need to make it back to impress their investors. Now, Tekken 8 isn't really doing so well, right? Sparking is kind of doing well, but if you look across the board at their other properties, I mean, they just don't have much going for them. Bandai Namco is one of the biggest gaming studios on the planet, and so far they're just dropping miss after miss after miss. Going all the way back to the beginning of the year, they were talking about how they canceled 5-6 games, but they didn't say what games. They just said, we're tired of making these low budget, low quality games, and we're done with it. A lot of people celebrated, but then a lot of people was like, wait a minute, what do they consider low budget? Like I said, the Soul Calibur could have been a part of that. We will never know unless they say, but you can only assume. But now you have here today, I'll read this headline. Bandai Namco has canceled development on multiple games. So again, including ones related to One Piece and Naruto. At this point, I don't think we're ever going to get a Soul Calibur 7 or 8. I don't know what number they're on, but it doesn't matter. They're not going to do it. They canceled so many games. The odds of them still working on a Soul Calibur, considering how Tekken 8 is performing, is not high at all. That game's probably donezo. But it continues. They are also reducing staff through traditional Japanese approach by sending workers to rooms where they are giving nothing to do, putting pressure on them to leave voluntarily. Now, before we analyze what's really happening here, you do have to just acknowledge the memes. If you click into the comment section and you look at this, people from other parts of the world are saying oh, if they send me to a room, still paying me, but they're trying to put pressure on me to leave, I would be loving it. I will sit there all day with my Steam Deck or my game deck or my phone and just, get paid to do nothing. That's what a lot of people are saying, but really I think the reality of this situation is far worse than we can imagine. A company putting pressure on an individual to leave, reading it probably sounds way better than experiencing it, is all I'm saying. Now, if you guys remember Dale Walker, this is the person who I was talking with on stream a little while ago, and also this was the person who was giving us a little a bit of developer perspective on the whole Tekken 8 stage situation, right? It says, because Japanese game studios aren't legally allowed to fire employees like the West, they have a practice called, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, where they make the employees' jobs so unpleasant they feel forced to quit. Staff are often put in windowless rooms with very little or nothing to do. For all the people who are like in America, EU, who say, oh, I would just sit there and blah, 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 blah. No, you wouldn't. Bandai Namco, they can't fire these people because of laws. I don't know if that's a good law or a bad law, but regardless, Bandai Namco doesn't want these employees. These employees are like a part of something in their organization related to video games that is not turning a profit. We can only speculate what games they come from, but you know, the whole idea that these guys are just sitting there, you know, living life, having a good time is not true, right? If this was an EU studio, an American studio, the headlines, instead of saying they're putting them in rooms, the headlines would say Bandai Namco just let go 1,000 employees, 500 employees, something like that, right? But let's dig deeper into this. Where all of these reports are coming from is this Bloomberg News article. It says Bandai Namco begins to cut headcount after culling game titles. Strict labor laws spur companies to incentivize regulations. Japanese companies in canceling console and smartphone games. One could argue, I see this from time to time, that the gaming industry itself is kind of not collapsing, but basically it got to big. You know, the pandemic forced a lot of people to you know, work from home, and a lot of people were playing video games, watching streaming services, and now so many years later we're seeing like all of the staffs that people were hiring and all the building up people were doing is starting to crumble down on itself. The same thing is kind of happening with the streaming services, where those guys are struggling to turn a profit, and you see movies getting canceled, you see people getting fired. Video games is doing their own version of that, right? And Bandai Namco is a part of all of it. Reading more of the Bloomberg News article, it says video game publisher Bandai Namco Holdings is cutting its workforce after canceling several titles due to a lackluster demand, according to people familiar with the matter. So lackluster demand, exactly what I'm talking about, right? Since April, affiliate Bandai Namco Studios Incorporated has moved about 200 of its roughly 1,300 employees to such rooms, and nearly 100 has resigned, said the people. More are expected to leave in the coming months, they said. So this situation has been going on since April. Imagine this. And this is also something that's not being highlighted as well, right? A lot of these people were working from home. Because of the pandemic. Bandai Namco has pulled all of these guys out of their houses and say, you are now going to go back to the office. But actually, surprise, you're not going to an office. You're going to this room with no windows, with no nothing. They make it as miserable as possible. And they say, sit there all day. Now, you may do that, you know, for like a couple of days. Some people are doing it for months, but eventually you will leave. They can't fire you, but eventually, and to think about it, right? Like a lot of these people, they joined the gaming industry to make video games, to inspire, to create. You know, even if you are like just want to be a lazy bum and just sit there, your sense of passion eventually will be like, okay, I need to move on and find another studio so I could keep my passion going. And that's what Bandai Namco is doing. Now, you could argue, why won't they just give them, well, no, you can't argue. I was going to say, why won't they just give them another game or another something to work on? But the news article said there, a lackluster demand. There is no demand for the slop that they're putting out. This is the second time that I'm reading that they like canceled multiple games. The number has to be in the double digits by now. Bandai Namco is going through a crazy time, and us being Tekken fans looking at this whole situation, this franchise has existed for 30 years, but if things keep going the way that they're going, it could get crazy for Tekken as well. You know, one thing that I will say about Tekken 7 was greenlit for 2 years already. Season 2 was guaranteed. For Tekken 8, I wonder how many seasons have already been greenlit, and how much time do they have to, you know, revert course to bring it back. You know, that's something you also got to consider. Now, all of this information is being leaked through this website, Leak Press. This is a website dedicated to like leaking information that the company won't acknowledge, won't say. This is stuff that like you'll never know about unless it's leaked. Now, how Bandai Namco will bounce back from this year, this has been a crazy year for them. 2024 will go down in history as probably Bandai Namco's worst year. How they will bounce back from this is yet to be seen. When we talk about the situation that Tekken 8 is in, this is the pressure.